The single most common cause of firearm failure isn't the barrel, the bolt, or the gas system. It's a simple spring, housed in cheap metal or polymer, designed by militaries to be thrown away. This fragile, often overlooked component, the magazine, dictates a weapon's tempo, capability, and sometimes the outcome of a firefight. We dissect the hidden geometry and brutal evolutionary pressures that forged every major type of ammunition feed device in history. Before the widespread adoption of smokeless powder, when armies sought practical repeating fire, the solution was simplicity itself, the tube magazine. Patented designs from the mid-19th century placed cartridges end-to-end in a tube, usually mounted under the barrel or sometimes concealed in the buttstock. A stiff spring drove the column forward. This format was the mainstay of lever-action and pump-action rifles and shotguns, offering common capacities ranging from 3 to a dozen rounds, scaling directly with the tube's length and the cartridge's size. But the physics of the tube imposed a catastrophic limitation. Because the rounds sit precisely in line, the pointed nose of one centerfire bullet rests directly against the primer of the cartridge ahead. Under the violent recoil forces inherent in repeating firearms, this configuration raised a genuine lethal risk of sympathetic detonation, turning the magazine into an explosive train. Consequently, tube magazines paired optimally with ammunition whose geometry carried no primer-to-nose hazard. This meant round-nose bullets, shotgun shells, or most rimfire cartridges, where the firing pin strikes the case rim, not a central primer. This fundamental safety constraint shaped the tube's modern home, hunting lever guns using round-nose loads, pump shotguns relying on shell types, and recreational rimfires where the geometry posed no risk. Loading methods, while straightforward, demanded time. Many designs required opening a loading gate near the receiver and pressing rounds against spring tension into the tube, while others necessitated withdrawing a spring-loaded follower from the muzzle end or magazine cap to expose the port. Mechanically simple and inherently durable against bending or warping, the tube's drawbacks were clear on the clock. Refills were agonizingly slower than swapping a modern detachable box, and the user could not visually assess remaining ammunition without manually cycling the action. Even so, the tube's simplicity, coupled with its excellent balance as the mass is distributed along the barrel, has kept it relevant wherever compatible ammunition excels. The quest for higher velocity and flatter trajectories demanded the abandonment of the round-nose bullet, forcing the evolution of the internal box magazine. Patented in 1878, the concept reached its maturity in rifles like the British Lee Metford and later the iconic Lee Enfield. This fundamental shift away from tubular storage finally allowed military doctrine to safely adopt the aerodynamic pointed Spitzer bullet. The fixed box quickly became the standard in the turn-of-the-century bolt actions, sitting permanently inside the receiver, typically holding between 5 to 10 cartridges, depending on the specific rifle and cartridge family. The Lee Enfield's 10-round capacity, which was exceptional for its era, reflected how armies briefly prioritized sustained fire and quick topping off over the expense and logistics of detachable spares. Rounds stack parallel to the bore, in either a single or double column, riding on a spring and follower up toward the fixed feed lips. The defining logistical technology for these rifles was the stripper clip. A charger bridge was engineered into the receiver, allowing the shooter to insert a cheap, disposable metal clip and press the 5 or 10 cartridges straight down into the internal magazine, discarding the empty clip immediately. This method streamlined logistics tremendously. Clips were cheap, compact, and the magazine itself remained permanently with the rifle, virtually eliminating loss or damage in the field. Fixed boxes offered mechanical simplicity and rugged durability, but the trade-off was operational speed. Without preloaded spare magazines to swap, reloads were inherently slower than the detachable format. Furthermore, clearing internal stoppages, such as a damaged follower or a bent feed lip, meant armorer work back at the depot, rather than a field-expedient replacement. Yet for decades, this fixed arrangement provided a robust balance of reliable feeding, safe use of pointed projectiles, and an infantry doctrine that relied on topping up from bandoliers during lulls in the fighting. The true breakthrough in combat sustainability arrived with the detachable box magazine. Emerging alongside the early self-loading pistols and rifles, this format became the undisputed standard across the 20th century, solving the reload speed problem decisively. In its essence, a detachable box is simply a spring, a follower, a body, and a floor plate that stacks cartridges parallel to the bore. The geometry, single column or double column, dictates the capacity and profile. Pistol magazines commonly range from compact single stacks to high-capacity double stacks, while rifle magazines for intermediate cartridges, such as 5.6 NATO or 6.2 by 39 millimeters, typically settle in the 20 to 30 round range. To push capacity even higher without excessive vertical length, specialized casket designs use 4 staggered columns that compress into a dual-column exit point near the feed lips. The defining virtue of the detachable format is its operational divorce from the host firearm. A shooter can seat rounds under the feed lips at a safe bench, use simple speed loaders that ride the back of the stack, or, crucially, top off via stripper clips through a guided adapter permanently fixed to the rifle's receiver in some designs. Materials have evolved drastically, moving from blued or parkerized steel, which offered dent resistance, to modern heat-treated steel and reinforced polymers, which drastically reduced weight and increased corrosion resistance. Each material choice involves inherent trade-offs in feed lip stability, dent resistance, and overall weight. But reliability truly lives or dies in the feed geometry. The follower must precisely present the cartridge at the exact angle and timing the bolt expects, and the feed lips must retain the stack under duress, yet cleanly release the top round under bolt travel. Bent lips or a tired spring introduce critical malfunction types: nosedives, where the cartridge dips below the required angle, or a catastrophic bolt-over-base malfunction, where the bolt skips entirely over the cartridge rim. This unforgiving geometry is why modern militaries treat detachable magazines not as durable equipment, but as essential, expendable consumables, accepting a high discard rate. Detachable boxes won the standardization race because they enabled the fastest practical reloads, allowed preloaded spares to function as immediate ammunition reserves, and isolated most stoppages to a component that could be swapped out in mere seconds, rather than requiring time-consuming field stripping. Despite the dominance of the box magazine, military thinkers continued to push the boundaries of on-gun capacity, leading to the development of the high-volume spiral stacker, the drum magazine. These cylindrical drums store cartridges along a spiral path around a central hub, presenting them under strong spring or clockwork tension. Although the idea predates the smokeless powder era, it found its recognizable, effective form in the early 20th century, seeing extensive exploration during both World War I and World War II. Iconic examples resonate through history: the 32-round Luger snail drum for the artillery P-08, the 50 and 100-round drums for the brutal Thompson submachine gun, and the ubiquitous 71-round drums common on the Soviet PPSH-41. Capacities for service calibers typically run robustly from 50 to 100 rounds, with the drum's diameter and depth meticulously scaling with the cartridge's length and taper. Drums attach either beneath or ahead of the receiver, depending on the platform, and require excruciatingly precise timing to reliably hand off a round to the incoming bolt. Loading a drum is inherently slower and more delicate than a box. Cartridges must be staged carefully along the spiral path, often requiring a manual winding step to preset the crucial spring tension. Historically, drums drew heavy criticism from infantry for their excessive weight, cumbersome bulk, and profound sensitivity to dirt ingress or spring fatigue. Many wartime users quickly reverted to standard stick magazines for mobility and reliable handling once the initial sustained burst was over. Furthermore, the manufacturing complexity, involving precise machining and assembly rather than simple bending and spot welding of a box, pushed production costs significantly higher. Still, the drum offered unmatched on-gun capacity for weapons like submachine guns and certain light rifles, enabling long continuous strings of fire before a mandatory reload. This capability proved invaluable during assaults, intense urban fighting, or in scenarios where dedicated belt-fed support weapons were unavailable. A further attempt to marry high capacity with improved geometry resulted in the exotic Helical magazine. This design coils cartridges along a screw-like path around a central axis, advancing the stack via a driven rotor mechanism. The concept first reached significant commercial form in the 1980s with California-based Helical, which engineered firearms around 50 and 100-round units, mounted controversially above the receiver. The approach later appeared in specialized Russian developments that placed a helical unit under the barrel on compact submachine guns. The core genius of the helical system is its use of space. Because cartridges follow a very long, gently curving path, the helix stores far more rounds than a traditional box magazine of similar length and height. Capacity and service calibers typically ranges from 50 to 100 rounds, without requiring the massive diameter of a conventional drum. The geometry must be perfectly matched to the cartridge's overall length and taper to prevent catastrophic binding within the coil. The principal benefits are a compact, high-on-gun capacity and a low overall profile that can, depending on mounting, keep sights closer to the bore line than a large projecting drum. However, the trade-offs are extreme complexity and servicing difficulty. Helicals contain far more moving parts than any other mechanism, demanding exacting manufacturing tolerances. Crucially, they typically load one round at a time through a small gate, drastically slowing replenishment compared with simply swapping out a detachable box. They ultimately found a niche where capacity and compactness were the primary drivers, offering an effective alternative to traditional drums for continuous fire in a relatively small footprint. Beyond the spiral designs lay mechanisms tailored for difficult ammunition shapes, such as the pan magazine. Pan magazines arrange cartridges horizontally in a flat disc, feeding them inward or downward via a spring mechanism. They appeared historically where heavily rimmed cartridges and steep tapers, ammunition features that challenge conventional vertical stacking, were prevalent, and they proved essential on early light machine guns and specific high-rate rimfire systems. The Soviet DP-27's distinct top-mounted dinner plate held approximately 47 rounds of the 62 by 54 mm far-rimmed rifle cartridge, and the earlier Lewis gun utilized a pan to ensure reliable feed with the .303 British round. Capacities varied widely, but centerfire military pans typically offered several dozen rounds. Because pan magazines sit either atop or across the receiver, they inherently and dramatically alter the weapon's balance and significantly increase the soldier's silhouette. They also greatly complicate carriage. A stack of flat discs is inherently bulkier and more awkward on a soldier's person than a compact bandolier of standard box magazines. As rimless cartridges became the global norm and vertical feed systems matured and improved, the operational advantages of the pan diminished. Reloads are slower and significantly more awkward than swapping a standard box from a pouch, and controlling dust ingress across the broad, shallow housing proved difficult in harsh field conditions. Even so, in their critical moment, pan magazines offered the only truly reliable feeding mechanism for difficult ammunition shapes and delivered substantial on-gun capacity for weapons that lacked belt feeds or could not practically mount the deeper, bulkier drum mechanisms. Seeking compactness and reliability for sporting applications, designers developed the Rotary magazine. This system holds cartridges securely between radial teeth on a sprocket or rotor, indexing them smoothly toward the feedway under the pressure of a torsion spring. Late 19th century European prototypes explored this layout, and it entered highly successful commercial service in the early 1900s with specialized sporting rifles. The arrangement later migrated successfully to rimfire designs, where its compactness and smooth, controlled presentation offered clear benefits. Capacity in rotaries is typically modest, generally 5 to 10 rounds for centerfire hunting rifles and 10 rounds for common rimfire rotaries, precisely because the rotor circumference directly governs how many rounds can be stored before the diameter grows unwieldy and non-flush. A significant advantage is that the cartridges remain parallel to the bore, completely avoiding the dangerous nose-to-primer alignment that constrained the earlier tubular systems, thus allowing pointed bullets to feed safely. Many rotary designs sit perfectly flush with the stock or trigger guard assembly, minimizing protrusions that might catch on clothing or brush in the field. The format runs exceptionally cleanly when manufacturing tolerances, spring torque, and cartridge dimensions align perfectly. However, the manufacturing demands close control of molded or machined components to ensure the rotor carries rounds without binding. Crucially, debris or grit within the intricate mechanism can cause indexing issues that a far simpler stamped box magazine would easily shrug off. Users value rotaries for their low, flush profile and exceptionally smooth cycling in well-executed designs. The cost, however, is significantly reduced capacity and more intricate internal parts compared with a simple stamped box. When the requirement shifts from volume bursts to sustained, continuous application of fire, the entire concept of a magazine is abandoned in favor of the belt magazine. Ammunition belts feed cartridges to machine guns continuously, dispensing with the finite capacity limitation imposed by any spring-stacked device. Their lineage runs from rigid feed strips used in the late 19th century to bulky, moisture-sensitive early canvas belts, and finally to modern standardized metal links. Belt systems are categorized based on their behavior after firing. Non-disintegrating belts keep their links connected and are typically rewound after use, while disintegrating belts shed an individual link with each round fired, clearing the path for the next cartridge as the bolt strips it from the link. Belt capacity is almost infinitely flexible, limited only by logistics and environment. Infantry teams commonly stage 50 to 200 round loads in rigid boxes or soft pouches clipped directly to the receiver or hung from the forend, while vehicle mounts feed runs of hundreds or even thousands. Belts commonly carry full-sized rifle cartridges, which is critical as it allows general-purpose and medium machine guns to sustain lethal, effective fire at extended distance. Furthermore, because the belt does not have to support the cartridge stack's weight against gravity the way a magazine spring does, the forces on the feed system are entirely different. Belt systems demand far more complex operation from the platform and the crew. Feed pawls, top covers, and return springs must index the metal links accurately, and if allowed to drag, belts can easily kink or collect grit, leading to stoppages. The shift to metal links largely solved the moisture shrinkage and oil contamination problems that plagued the early fabric belts. The payoff, however, revolutionized warfare. Sustained fire without frequent magazine changes fundamentally altered infantry tactics, logistics, and redesigned the machine gun's role from a mere rapid firearm to a continuous fire area weapon. It is vital to draw a line between magazines, which hold the ammunition stack within a dedicated mechanism, and clips, which are merely carriers for rapid loading. Stripper clips, also known as chargers, function by bridging a guide machined into the rifle's receiver, allowing the shooter to press a full set of rounds straight down into the rifle's fixed internal magazine, discarding the empty clip afterward. The rarer end-block clips insert directly with the cartridges and remain within the rifle until they are forcefully ejected by the mechanism, often with a distinctive ping, which further streamlines the loading process and keeps the stack consistent as the last rounds feed. Typical capacities for both types run from 5 to 10 cartridges, dictated by the rifle's internal magazine size and the cartridge dimensions. Military bolt actions across numerous nations were explicitly designed around charger loading to speed resupply and vastly reduce the cost and bulk associated with carrying numerous detachable magazines. Even certain early semi-automatic rifles with fixed internal boxes utilized charger or end-block systems, notably those built around full-power rifle cartridges before detachable boxes were fully standardized. Their practical virtues remain compelling: low cost, extreme lightweight, and high-speed topping off for a soldier operating under intermittent fire. While a bent or muddy clip can certainly slow loading, the logistical advantage in supplying mass armies was absolutely decisive. Even in the modern era, stripper clips continue to serve a valuable function as a convenient, cheap way to top off high-capacity detachable magazines via simple adapters, effectively bridging 20th century logistics with modern equipment. Finally, we turn to the specialized world of revolvers, where reloads were dramatically quickened with the advent of moon clips and speed loaders. These are not technically magazines, but purpose-built loading aids. A circular speed loader holds a full cylinder's complement of cartridges, typically 5 to 8, securing them until a twist, press, or slide motion releases them simultaneously into the chambers. Moon clips are unique devices designed to secure rimless cartridges, such as 9x19mm or 45 auto, by their extraction grooves. This is critical because it allows a revolver's star ejector to cleanly lift and expel rimless cases, solving the extraction mismatch that these cases present in a design inherently built for rimmed ammunition. Various designs trade bulk for speed. Rigid circular loaders drop a complete set at once, while flexible strip loaders carry flat in a pocket and feed 1 or 2 chambers at a time for a lower profile carry. In service use and competitive shooting, training is the critical variable. Practiced hands can seat and lock a full cylinder in seconds, achieving reload times that rival semi-automatics. However, unfamiliar users frequently lose more time wrestling with alignment and retention mechanisms than the device saves. The mechanical burden on the revolver is modest, but quirks exist. Some speed loaders rely on spring detents that collect lint and grit, and thin moon clips can warp handled carelessly, compromising head spacing and reliable extraction. Despite these cautions, this specialized category kept the revolver viable for roles that prioritize immediate reliability and familiar handling, providing a reload path drastically faster than single cartridges and enabling the use of modern rimless service ammunition in a wheel gun without exotic, complicated chamber modifications. We have charted the brutal evolution of these critical components, from the simple spring-driven tubes of the 19th century to the complex helical feeders and continuous belt systems of the modern era. But one fundamental question remains unanswered. How did the adoption of these specific feed mechanisms, especially the detachable box magazine, fundamentally change the rate of fire on the battlefield? Next time, we put these mechanisms to the test and calculate the true strategic impact of the 30-round magazine. You cannot afford to miss that analysis.